Temple, bring me an ink pot. Good day. Ah, there's my stick. How do you do, my friends? Welcome. Oh, it's very nice to see you. Oh, not quite so close. Excuse me, I'm not a young man. Will you indulge me if I do apologize? Welcome, my friends. My name is Benjamin Franklin. It's very nice to have you all here. Most unusual way to meet you, as I must be frank, I cannot see nor hear you. I hope that you can see and hear me all right. And as I am not young, I hope you will indulge me if I sit for this brief conversation. I say brief, though I have been accused of being somewhat long-winded. You must forgive me for that. I have spent a lot of time of late with politicians, and so one must get one's own words in when it doesn't matter. I digress. I wish to introduce myself and speak to you. Well, are you familiar with the notion of virtue? I'm sure you are. When I was a very young man, I grew up in Boston, and having left Boston, I went to New York, and I could not find a job because I did not have journeyman papers, and then I walked across New Jersey to Philadelphia, and then I was 17 years old. By the time I was 18 years old, I had left. I was given an opportunity to go to London. I was in London for just under 2 years or so, and then returned to Philadelphia. And on my way back from London, I realized that I had very little prospects. I did not necessarily have a job lined up. I was not yet married. I was almost 20 years old. I was 20 years old. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a wife. Oh, forgive me. So I sat down and I took out my journal. I have a journal here, right here. This is not that journal. I've had many journals since then. But I began to write a list of virtues. And I have repeated that list. Let me just put this down for a second. I had repeated that list in the front of every journal since then, including this one. And it started with a list of 12 virtues. Here, I'll show you. I don't know if you can see this all right. There we are. List of 12 virtues. You see it says right there, virtues, and there's the list. Oh my, now you've seen my handwriting. Well, that's all right. So the third point is that that sometime later, after I published a small essay called, a pamphlet really, called Observations and Experiments on Electricity, it was recommended to me that I add a 13th virtue to my list, that which I have done, and that is the virtue of humility. Humility. And here I am, inviting you to come and hear about my life's work and my life. And you are strangers to me, some of you perhaps. And so that is not very humble. So you can see the difficulty. I'm going to proceed, but do please recognize that I am trying to live a more virtuous life. I have been trying. Perhaps you someday will try to live a more virtuous life as well. I have created a scientific method for it, what I call my moral compass or my moral algebra. You can pick up my autobiography and read all about that. So I'm not going to tell you about it. Not right now, but perhaps on a future visit. Also, oft times I am given the opportunity to go and visit people at their schools. I founded a school. I often go to libraries. That is not possible because of our epidemic. I have lived through many epidemics, my friends. These trying times shall pass. In fact, I have oft found that though there is great sacrifice and danger in such times of war and disease, it can also bring out great strength of character, great usefulness. One sees often the kindness of a society joined together. Again, this is not what we're here to talk about. We're not here to talk about virtue. We're not here to talk about health. We are here to talk about enlightenment. Do you know this word? Enlightenment. That's who I am. That's where I come from. I am of the age of enlightenment, the age of reason. What does that mean? Well, there's a lot of ways to think of it. I like to think of it like this. You remember Copernicus. Well, you don't remember him. You don't know him. I never knew him. He was gone long before I was born. Sometime in his life, Copernicus discovered that the Earth is rotating around the sun, that the sun is the center of what we call the solar system, the system of the sun. Nobody necessarily believed him. In fact, a lot of people saw Copernicus's ideas as a threat to religion. That's no longer the case. When I discovered that lightning was a form of electrical fluid, I was not exiled or excommunicated from my church. I was applauded. I received letters of congratulation. I was invited to visit kings in Europe. The King of Sweden invited me to his palace. The King of France, who I would meet. I was given honorary degrees and feted. My new understandings were not seen as a challenge to religion, but rather a greater edification, a greater clarity, a greater understanding of the mysteries of the universe. This is enlightened thinking. Science and religion have found a way to coexist. And I would argue that the revolution for independency that we have gone through is another example of that. That the notions of liberty, more people participating, an end to the aristocracy, is enlightened thinking. God, divine providence, did not choose certain people to rule over the rest of us. This is my belief. So, for the very first time in history, in my time, we see science and religion and politics, government, all coming together, all coexisting. And that we call enlightenment. So, there are so many examples. There are so many stories I wish to tell you. I wish to tell you about my first experience with this, which came in the most unusual way. When I was a very young man, I was quite infatuated with swimming. I loved to swim. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, we moved over to near the Mill Street Pond in South Boston, and we would be in that pond every day in the summer and spring, and swimming and splashing about, and building dams, and I fixed paddle. Anyway, the point is that that somewhere around that time, I found myself in possession of a small pamphlet, a book by a man in France named Thibodeau. I must have gotten it from one of the sailors or soldiers in Boston town, and it was called The Art of Swimming. And this book taught me not just how to swim. I was already a very good swimmer, but sort of how swimming was a science, a philosophy, that there were ways to learn, that one could read a book to become a better swimmer. How unusual, how strange that is to a young man to understand. And this really, more than anything else, gave me my great love of books. Later, I would found a college and a library. Hopefully, we'll have more time to talk, and we can learn about that, and I can share some stories about founding the library company. I'm very proud of it. But that was a young man in Boston, perhaps not the least religious town you'll ever visit. coming to understand the natural wonders through reading. And through studying fluid dynamics, which I did, I would eventually understand and study electrical fields, the fluids of electricity, along with many other people. So, there are so many stories to tell you, but I want to focus on one summer, many years later. Let's leave my childhood in Boston aside, my travels to Philadelphia at the age of 17, on to London at 18, back to Philadelphia to marry, have children, start a business, my printing interest. Later still, to create the Almanac, which would give me so much success as a printer. I often said that in the future, the name Benjamin Franklin will be long forgotten, but Richard Saunders will remain. Poor Richard, my creation, who is far more popular than his publisher. Nonetheless, let us leave all that behind. Let us even leave behind the revolution, declaration. Oh, look, I have a copy of this right here. Our declaration of, you can't see this. We are. A declaration of, why is that backwards? I don't understand this technology. But don't worry, I'll figure it out. Let us leave that all behind. The war, my work as a minister in France, as our first minister to Sweden. Let us go forward to July of 1783. I'm in Paris, living out. Sorry. I should pick that up. Temple! Sally, where's Temple? I don't think there's anybody here. I live with my daughter Sally and my grandson Temple and my son-in-law Richard. Forgive me, I'm not a young man. I think I've been left alone in the house. So, where was I? All right. July 1783. I'm in Paris, living just outside Paris in Passy, and my grandson Temple is with me, and we're swimming in the morning on the Seine, and I am helping to negotiate, and he is helping me negotiate, a treaty between the English and the Americans, and we will be successful. America will become a truly independent nation. There will be no English or French or Spanish or Dutch troops in our 13 states. Huzzah, we've won the war and the peace. It's right around that same time, July 1783, that a stranger arrives in Paris with a great medical claim, a great new discovery. He has taken an instrument, a musical instrument, which I had invented many years earlier, called the glass harmonica. Now, the glass harmonica is a row of glasses that you play by rotating a spindle with your fingers, and it makes a most eerie sound. It's really quite delicate and delightful. It's really more of a parlor instrument. I have one in my parlor, and I'll show it to you on another visit, but it's really more of a parlor, because it's very quiet and soothing. Not appropriate for a big orchestra necessarily, hard to hear, but in a parlor setting. But because its sound is very eerie, and for a number of other reasons, it has lost favor. People believe incorrectly that the sound of the glass harmonica can cause brain fever, which can kill you. That listening to my musical instrument can in fact lead to death. And so, not surprisingly, because this belief is out there, it's not very popular. So, right around July of 1783, a young man comes from the German regions. I think he was from Hesse or Prussia, and he has brought one of these glass harmonicas, and he has made the claim that he can use it to cure illness. In fact, he says that in his hands, this eerie music, I'm touching myself again, that, sorry, I keep touching my face, and I've been told not to do that. So he's been told that he's been claiming that this glass instrument in his hands can be used to cure everything from lameness to blindness. So the king has invited a group of philosophers, what the French call scientists, to study this man's claim and to see if it is true, to determine its veracity. And I am amongst the scientists. And we interview him. His name is Friedrich Mesmer. And we interview Monsieur Mesmer and some of his patients, and ultimately we discover that this is absolute nonsense and that he is really nothing more than a charlatan. But it's certainly understandable that people would believe that a musical instrument could cause, or rather cure, blindness, just as it was believed that the same musical instrument could cause brain fever. This is the Age of Enlightenment. A lot of great things are happening. A new country is being born, a new form of independency, a new age enlightenment. So how is his claim any more remarkable? Right around the same time, I found myself with my eyesight failing. This is not uncommon, and I would be working at a desk like this, a table like this, and I was always having to, I would use one of these little, you can't see this, I would use, getting up again, I would use a little map reader. You see this little map reader? To help me read, or a magnifying glass, or a pair of glasses, spectacles, with very convex lenses. And I was always having to take my glasses off when someone came into the room and put on a different pair of glasses, spectacles, to talk to you. Now I can see you just fine. Hello, good day. Touching my face again. So, it's just water. Remember, I am the water American, as they call me. So here I am, very busy, wasting a lot of time putting spectacles on and off, and so I came up with an idea, which I gave to a glazier, an instrument maker, to make me a pair of eyeglasses, spectacles, I don't know why I keep saying that twice, that would have more convex lenses on the bottom and less convex lenses on the top. My bifocals, you see they focus, so if I look over the top I can see out clearly far away, but if I look out of the bottom, here, I'll show you, this is that, this is the journal in which I first, here you can see this, see if you can, do you see there's a little, all right, anyway, doesn't really matter, it all seems very simple. So, now I don't know if anybody's going to be interested in this or not, it doesn't really matter, it's been very useful for me, but here we are. So, it's the summer of 1783. I've invented this wonderful new useful tool. Monsieur Mesmer has come and made great claims of medical innovation. Oh, goodness gracious. And right at the same time, there are two brothers in Paris who are paper makers by the name of Montgolfier. Jean, no, not Jean. I have a brother, Jean. Jacques and Joseph. Joseph and Jacques, paper makers, and they have invented a new device in which they can take a large balloon, fill it with hot air or chemicals, hydrogen, and lift that air up, that balloon up into the air. And in that summer, they launched, I'm just going to leave it, Temple will be home soon, he'll take care of it. They launched that balloon into the air with a duck or a chicken or something. I was there, I don't remember, I think it was a duck. Maybe it was a duck and a chicken. Anyway, it's been launched in the air and it's traveled thousands of meters up and come back down safely. It's really, really remarkable. We've all seen it, it's true. This is real. This is not Mesmer's claims that seem incredible, but are, but you can understand, if these gentlemen are introducing us to the hot air balloon, and I'm introducing us to a new form of a new country, and it is understandable that the Enlightenment it seems amazing. It seems remarkable. It seems possible that anything is possible. So in August of 1783, at the Champs de Mars, I am there with the King and the Queen of France, Marie Antoinette, so beautiful, a very good musician, and I don't expect great things from her, unfortunately. I'm afraid their fortunes are, but, well, anyway, the point is that there we are at the Champs de Mars, and we watch one of the Montgolfier, I think it was Jacques, launch himself into one of these balloons, being lifted by something lighter than air, hydrogen. It's really remarkable. I had been studying a flammable air, what my friend Signore Volta Alfonso will call methane. But so they launch a balloon with a person on it, and they go thousands of feet into the air, thousands of meters into the air, and come back down safely. It's really one of the most remarkable things I've seen in my entire life, and I must tell you, I've crossed the ocean. I've seen a lot of remarkable things and met a lot of remarkable people, but this is extraordinary, and I suggest that perhaps it is more than just extraordinary, it is world-changing. Perhaps these balloons, these hot air balloons, will end war. Let me elaborate. Imagine a town, a fortified town, not like Philadelphia. Philadelphia is unfortified and it's on a big river, but imagine like Boston or London, a fortified town with hundreds of these hot air balloons affixed to above the city, each one with two people in it, one who can drop bombs down on approaching ground troops. What could they possibly do? Any city would be completely defensible. It is a possibility. I have no doubt that people in the future will find new ways to fight one another. I've spent too much of my time with you. My time. I am old and retired. I am happy to spend all the time I can with you, but your time, I'm sure, is limited, and I don't want to bore you. Anyway, my point is that I have many stories to tell. Here are just a couple from the Enlightenment. My good friend John Locke had a most wonderful take on the Enlightenment. He said, it's one of my absolute favorites. John said, "I envision a capitalist society based not on personal interest, but on public spirit." Isn't that wonderful? My mother, Abaya, always said that to me. She in a much more concise way. She said, Benny, be useful. Be useful. It's good advice. It's good advice to us all. So, I've quoted John Locke and I've quoted my mother. I think before I go, you may expect that I should quote myself. If you've read Poor Richard, you may think that you're familiar. A penny saved is 2 pence clear, or genius is nothing more than a greater aptitude for patience. These are really sort of Anyway, the point is that I had a quote which I was going to share with you, which of course I've lost. But give me just a moment and I will find it. You're very kind to indulge me this way. How terribly uncomfortable we all are watching an old man look at a book. It doesn't really seem like, oh, I found it. Doesn't seem very entertaining at all. But I do apologize. It's much easier for me to quote my mother or John Locke than it is myself. Perhaps later in another visit we'll have a chance to read some of Shakespeare's work. I have sometimes almost wished that it had been my destiny to be born 2 or 3 centuries hence. For improvement and innovation are prolific and beget more of their kind. The present progress is rapid, and that I might have my curiosity satisfied in knowing what is to be, it is tempting. It is even seductive. Of course, such is not to be. So, I will remain content in knowing that though I cannot gleam the future, perhaps our descendants will glance from time to time back toward us. So, I want to thank you all, my friends. I want to thank you all, my friends, for spending these few moments. I think over a half an hour of your time has been wasted with me. I hope not wasted, glancing back toward us. And I hope that we will meet again. If you have any questions for me, do remember what I said. I cannot blame the future, but I would be more than happy to share any clarity about or clarification about my time with all of you. I look forward to more visits, and I want to thank you all.